Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Richard Moglin, and welcome to this week's Stock Market Outlook video. As always, we're going to be covering a lot today, so feel free to use the timestamps down below to navigate to your preferred part of this video. All right, so starting with the true market leaders, let's first take a big picture view here, and you can see that a lot of them are hitting both price and relative strength new highs, which is a good sign for the overall health of the market. But one thing I am watching is how many of them are over 85 here in the 10-4 stochastic. And when a stock is over 85 or so, that means, in my view, that they're a little bit short-term extended and are definitely too extended for a new entry. So when they're up at these elevated levels, that could mean that there's going to be a pullback relatively soon, but it doesn't have to mean that, meaning that you can ride the top of the Bollinger Band for quite a while before a stock finally corrects. So don't sell a stock just because it's near the upper Bollinger Band or because it has a 10-4 stochastic that's pretty elevated. That could just mean that it's a very powerful move overall. So there's a lot of strength here, but that is something that I'm watching very, very closely. And you do see two downside reversals. Let's go to CELH, which I own currently. You can see that on this day, it was a downside reversal. It took out the high of the previous day, but closed nearish the lows of the day's range on higher volume than the previous day. So overall, one bearish candle, but the big picture of the chart, the overall trend is definitely very strong and a sustained uptrend. So I'm not too worried at this time. And the other one, let's go to that one, is Corsair. And overall, this one is a little bit more serious in my mind because of the huge volume coming in, although you do have to take into account that it was quad witching on this Friday. And overall, it was only down 2.67%, and it finished pretty well off the lows. So once again, one bearish candle. We've got a nice start of an uptrend here from the 21 EMA. So I wouldn't be too worried if you're in this at this point with a decent cushion. Maybe you bought off the retake of the 21 EMA right here on the green or teal dot entry. So overall, it looks pretty good. And now our best performer this week was apps, which was from my watch list, as well as one of the stocks I currently own. Great action, trending above all those key moving averages. You can see that's well above the daily Bollinger Band. So once again, this could mean that's going to pull back relatively soon. And I actually did take some off at about 22% profit on this Wednesday. So looks strong overall. Definitely a potential true market leader. Great run this year and looking to extend those gains into this December. Next up, we've got Peloton, which is also trending above all those key moving averages. You can see the 21 EMA has now crossed above the 50 SMA. Relative strength is strong, going at a 45-degree angle as it builds out the right side of this base and actually finished above this high right here at 139.75. So it's either going to form a handle here or breakout from this cup shape. Great volume coming in on Friday, and overall a very strong move from the 50 SMA. Next up, we've got NEO, and overall it moved up well from the upside reversal on this Monday. And you can see that's now back above the 21 EMA and it continues to trend above that 50 SMA. So it looks very strong as it tries to build out this base and absorb this monster move that's had. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on this one for an additional entry because of the strength of this move. Next up, we've got CrowdStrike, and overall a nice move this week, continuing its gains from the earnings gap up. And overall, you can see a huge gap up on volume on Friday because there has been some news recently surrounding the cybersecurity companies because of all the hacks recently. And there's actually an ETF called Hack, which could be an option for you if you want broader exposure to this group here. So stocks like Zscaler, CyberArk, CrowdStrike, they're benefiting from the current environments where everybody needs increased protection. Also stocks like Net, Cloudflare. So anyway, CrowdStrike looks very strong. Definitely short-term extended at this point, right above the upper Bollinger Band, but overall trending above all those key moving averages with price and relative strength into new all-time highs. GRWG broke out from the downward trend line here in a potential high-tight flag and looks very strong. You had a nice consolidation day on this Thursday, finishing well off the lows, and a continued move up on this Friday. Moving on, we've got EMPH, which continues to trend higher. Solar has been very, very strong this year, and you can see it's riding that upper Bollinger Band above all those key moving averages. Corsair, we already covered, but it looks pretty strong overall as it forms its first kind of standard base here after the IPO base and I will be watching this one very closely. Upwork continues to trend higher above those key moving averages right at the upper Bollinger Band. Nice volume coming in late last week as it moves into new price and relative strength all-time highs. Tesla, after the inclusion into the S&P 500, looks very strong, fishing right at the top of the day and week's trading ranges on huge volume, absolutely massive volume here as it broke out above this short-term shelf this past week. So it looks very good above all those key moving averages. Etsy, you can see, is also trending above all those key moving averages at the upper Bollinger Band. Looks good, great volume coming in, but definitely short-term extended once again. XP, you can see I sold half of my position on this day right here, the 16th, but overall continues to trend well, moving up from the stage 2 base after a very strong prior uptrend. So I'll be looking to hold that last half position until it really tells me to sell by breaking those key moving averages, either the 21 EMA or even potentially 50 SMA if I want to give it a lot of room. So that is XP. And next up, we've got SQ, which once again is trending above all those key moving averages, acting very, very strong. Great recovery on this Friday. You can see it tried to move down, found support near the close of the previous day, but is still within the wick of this Thursday here. Looks good into new price and relative strength all-time highs. Zscaler also had a nice move on the Thursday and Friday with good volume coming in as it moves up from this earnings gap up. Melly continues to act well, trending above all those key moving averages with price and relative strength moving into all-time highs. Not the greatest volume coming in here, but overall it's trending beautifully, doing nothing wrong at all. CELH also is trending higher, although you do have the downside reversal potentially on this Friday. But overall, I really like the move on this Wednesday on higher volume. Twilio, you can see, continues to trend higher from this base here, trending above all those key moving averages with price and relative strength into new all-time highs. It's great that I keep saying that for all these leaders. That shows how strong this overall market is. Zillow continues to trend higher, although did take a little bit of a break this past week, and I did sell half my position here. Overall, you can see higher volume coming in on this Friday, and it finished near the low here. So I will be watching to see if it can hold this low, potentially form a short-term flag before continuing to move up. But overall, I like the price pattern. Great volume coming in on the breakout, and it looks very, very strong. AMD, you can see, had a nice move up through the downward trend line on Monday, but then kind of formed a short shelf here and a nice upside reversal off the 10-day moving average on this Friday. Fetch continues to just keep going up above all those key moving averages. This is really a great example of not selling a stock too soon until it really breaks that 21 EMA. Look at how beautiful this is. Just continues to trend above that key moving average and even finding support at the 10-day moving average. It hasn't closed below that moving average since this breakout right here. Fiverr, you can see, try to move up this past Friday. If we draw in this right here, you can see it just faded on Friday, but overall this definitely is one to watch next week because this price action right here is very, very constructive. You can see a nice upside reversal through the 21 EMA here on decent volume, and overall looks very strong. Great prior uptrend here. And moving on, we've got C Limited, which pulled back to the pivot here. Let me draw this in, and you can see it found support there and then bounced nicely as you would expect it to do so. TDD continues to trend higher above all those key moving averages after the huge earnings breakout. Roku trending above all those key moving averages, price and relative strength new all-time highs. Cloudflare looks great. You had a nice move on Friday, breaking above these highs right here. Snap trending above all those key moving averages. Pins as well. It's forming a little bit of a shelf here. Let me draw that in right there, but overall looks pretty good. And you might expect it to bounce off the 21 EMA before continuing its uptrend. NVCR, you can see after this very strong move up, has pulled back pretty dramatically, but so far is trying to find support at its 10-day moving average. And even this day, although it was high red volume, you can see it had a nice move off the lows. So I view this as constructive. And PLTR, if we look at this, you can see it's forming a VCP here. And overall, I'm looking to add to my position if it breaks above this high at 27.45. So that is a run through of the potential true market leaders. If there's any stocks that you think I should add to this list, just let me know down below in the comment section. And now moving on, let's go to the QQQ on a day-by-day time frame and take a look at the week. So first things first, we've got this Monday. Overall, we continue to move up from this inside day right here. And that really started the momentum of this week. You had a great day on this Tuesday, falling all the way to the close of this day, but rebounding and finishing near the highs. Then nice move up on Wednesday and Thursday, and then nice reversal in pretty much the last 15 minutes of Friday to avoid a distribution day on the NASDAQ. So great action overall, and I would expect us to continue upwards from this bar right here. And going to a weekly chart, you can see that overall we were up 2.72% on the week with a nice week closing range of 78.6% and a daily closing range on Friday of 56.1%. So the expectation for this bar is we go sideways or higher, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend. Moving on to the SPY, you can see we were up 0.79%, so the NASDAQ was leading this week, and overall the weekly closing range was 58.9%, and a daily closing range on Friday of 52.3%. So overall from this bar, the expectation is sideways or higher, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend. Moving on to the IWM, you can see we're up 2.65% this past week with a week closing range of 68.7% and a daily closing range on Friday of 17.8%. So the expectation for this bar is sideways or higher, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend. Next up, we've got GBDC, which is a representation of Bitcoin, overall up 43% as it broke out of the short shelf here this past week. Nice volume coming in, looks very, very good. And the expectation from this bar is sideways or higher, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend. And moving on to Ethereum, also a very strong week, up 56.22%. And the expectation from this bar is sideways or higher. And we aren't quite in a stage 2 uptrend just yet because the 10-week isn't above the 30-week, but it looks very, very good. But I would expect it to pause somewhat when it approaches these intermediate highs. Next up, we've got the Dow Jones, overall up 0.32% with a week closing range of 60.4% and a daily closing range of 57.4%. And overall, the expectation from this bar is sideways or higher, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend. Moving on, we've got the FFTY, and this is very promising for growth stocks. You can see it broke out of this range here, up 5.22%, so actually led all the indexes this week, and it had a nice weekly closing range of 97.3% and a daily closing range on Friday of 85.3%. And the expectation from this bar is sideways or higher, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend. GLD, you can see retook all those key moving averages, and you can see had a nice closing range as well. So the expectation from this bar is sideways or higher, and it was up 2.29% with a week closing range of 79.5% and a daily closing range on Friday of 38.6%. Looking at the VIX, you can see it was down this week, which is promising, down 7%. And overall, once again, I would like to see it take out these lows. That would be very, very promising for trend followers. And finally, we've got XLF, which has moved up from this gap up here, but is still within this range. And the expectation from this bar is sideways or higher, and we are in a stage 2 uptrend. So that's a run through of the market indexes. And overall, there's very good action, especially with the QQQ, IWM, and SPY right near all-time highs, trending above all those key moving averages. So moving on, let's talk about my previous watch list, and let's sort by the weekly change here. So overall, you can see we had some great performers this week. Apps and CALX were up over 25%. PTON, REGI, GRWG, PayPal, CRNC, all above or near 10%. And we only had 2 losers this week. So starting with apps, we already covered it, but looks great above all those key moving averages. CALX broke this downward trend line right here after finding support at the green line here. Great breakout on this Monday, and you also could have bought it using this pivot right there. Peloton, I bought it on this Monday. Great action, exactly what you want to see after it breaks a pivot. REGI also broke this downward trend line. This is a very clean base here. GRWG, we already talked about, but great downward trend line break. PayPal broke out above this downward trend line, found support at it on this Tuesday, but then continued on upwards on good volume. CRNC looks very strong above this downward trend line, and great action on Thursday, and then pretty much a consolidation day on Friday. SITM is still kind of within this range here, but did move up on this Thursday, and you can see a lot of volume coming in, but remember it's quad witching, and just an inside day on Friday. Nova had a nice move up, but then kind of faded towards the end of the week. But overall, still one to watch within this range right here. AMD, where I covered Frog, you can see that it broke this low here, but then rebounded nicely and is setting back up as it tries to break through this pivot, as well as the 50 SMA over here. BEKE, you can see never really formed any kind of pattern here. And lastly, we've got mRNA, which is still within this space after it found support at the 21 EMA. So overall, great performance from my watch list, and make sure you guys tune in tomorrow when I'll be bringing out my next list of ideas. So moving on, let's go over to the sentiment surveys, and overall you can see a big increase this week from 51.3% bullish to now 58.4% bullish, which is definitely on the higher end, so keep that in mind. Looking at the NAAIM exposure index, you can see we actually dropped this week, although it's still elevated above 100. So I like the drop, but I don't like that it's still at this very elevated level. Looking at the bulls versus bears poll, you can see we're still elevated, but we did drop over the course of the week. And looking at the put call ratio, you can see we're moving in the right direction, but still very, very low down here near 0.5. So overall, in terms of sentiment, nothing has changed from the past 3 weeks. We're still very, very bullish and a bit overheated. But once again, price action is king, and you can't kind of predict the pullback. You have to follow the stocks that you own. So moving on, let's talk about the IBD Big Picture article. And overall, the title is Stock Market Rallies Off Lows, but S&P 500 Tagged with Mild Distribution Day. So overall, they talk about the strong comeback this Friday caused by all those late adds to the indexes. And this actually did result in a distribution day for the S&P 500. Moving on, they talk about how the NASDAQ is currently a little extended at 7% above its 50-day moving average. Let's actually go over to this graph right here, and let's bring up the composite. And you can see that I've got the percentage from the 50-day plotted down here, and it's actually the exponential. So let's bring that back to simple. And there you go. We're 7% above the 50-day, which is historically a little bit elevated. And quickly looking at the Webby RSI, you can see that we did have a spike on this Thursday, but we brought it back down towards the green line on this past Friday, allowing us to pull a little bit closer to the 21 EMA. So moving back to the article, you can see they talk about some recent IPOs, Dash and ABNB, and talk about some stock market movers, CDNS, TXG, which faded badly and had a lot of wild action on this past Friday. PANY, CrowdStrike, and Zscaler scored big gains, and overall solar stocks did well. DQ triggered an 8-week hold rule, and TSM just completed a 3 weeks type pattern. So overall, their view is a confirmed uptrend, and we now have 5 distribution days on the S&P 500 and 2 on the NASDAQ. And finally, looking at the GMI signal, you can see it's still green since November 5th, and overall, the GMI score is a strong 6 out of 6. So overall, taking everything into account, my current view is we are still in a confirmed uptrend, but sentiment is definitely overheated, so I'm watching my stocks very closely and monitoring for any signs of a potential pullback. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And I'll see you guys in future videos.